Hi, welcome back to Mr. Slover's Math. Today we're going to talk about determining the best sample and survey to use. So a population is all the members of a set. A sample is part of a population. If you determine a sample carefully, the statistics for the sample can be used to make a general conclusion about the larger population. So let's backtrack on population and sample. Let's talk about going to get a free sample of food. Typically, Costco and Sam's Clubs does this. So when you go in there and they have a free sample, it's just a small portion of like a cookie. So they give you a small portion of the cookie. If you like the cookie, you buy the whole package. Well, the cookie is the sample, the whole package is the population. So think of sample and population for statistics in terms of that. The sample is the smaller part and the population is the whole. There are different ways that you collect samples. One of them is an observational study, where you measure or observe members of a sample so that they are not affected by the study. Another one is a controlled experiment, where you divide the sample into two groups. You give a treatment to one group but not the other control group. Then you compare the results. Typically that's used in medications or medical surveys or medical experiments. And then the last one is a survey, where you ask every member of the sample the same question or questions. And when you're doing that, you need to make sure that you have some validity. You need to make sure that your test is valid. So if your sample is chosen randomly, that's good. If the sample is an appropriate size, that's good. If there's no bias, that is also good. So sample is chosen randomly. That's exactly what it means. You're asking random people. You're not just asking your friends what type of TV they like, and then based off that information, you're going to assume that everyone at the high school likes that type of TV show. Same thing with the sample size. It's got to make sure it's an appropriate size. If I ask two people what their favorite color is in the high school, I can't say that everyone's going to have that as their favorite color. So let's say John and Joe both say purple. I can't go ahead and say that everyone at the high school's favorite color is purple. That doesn't make any sense. My sample size was only two people, whereas the high school there's 1,400 students. And I want to make sure that there's no bias. And bias is the favoring of one group over another, which may or may not be done on purpose. So sometimes bias is done on purpose and sometimes it's not. So we just want to try and avoid that. And we can do that by asking random people. So these are just different options for us to practice what study method that we're going to use, whether it's an observational, a controlled, or a survey. So you can read through those and it's just asking, hey, which one would work for a sleep study? Well, an observation would, right? Because the person is sleeping, they're not going to be able to answer a question. Can't be a controlled experiment. You're not having one person sleep and one person not, because you're trying to see what that one individual, what their sleep pattern is like. So the only one that works is an observation. Okay, well, let's say that you do want to do a survey. Well, that's good. There's 4 different types of survey that we can choose from. One is a convenience, and it's exactly what it sounds like, just like a convenience store. It's nice. It's an easy location. We're doing it because it's easy to use. Same thing here. We're choosing any people readily available. So if I want to survey someone, a convenience survey would be surveying people in my class. Okay, that's convenient for me. I don't have to go and do anything extra to get that information. Another type of survey is called the self-selection. It's having people volunteer to participate in the survey. So self-selection, someone is volunteering to participate or to answer your questions. A systematic survey. We're going to order the population and we're going to choose participants at regular intervals. And then random type of survey, choosing from all members of the population equally without in order. And so you're just asking people randomly. And down here, this is the same thing as before. You're just reading through and figuring out what type of survey that they're talking about. So you can read through that on your own. And then the last part, so Mimi wants to conduct a survey of her 300 classmates to determine which candidate for class president is in the lead for the upcoming election. So she's going to ask which of the following methods of surveying her classmates will make valid conclusions. So remember, we want valid conclusions. Asking all students at Ronald's lunch table. Well, that's probably not going to be a valid conclusion. We're not going to get valid responses or valid data because we're only focusing on Ronald's lunch table. So chances are Ronald's friends are going to pick Ronald, right? We're showing bias there. All the members in the Napoleon soccer team. So once again, we're showing bias because we're focusing only on Napoleon's soccer team to get our data to figure out who's in the lead for the upcoming election. The next one, putting the names of all students in a hat and drawing 50 names. That is fair. That's a valid conclusion. We don't have any bias. Same thing with letter E. If we ask every single student, there's not going to be bias because we're asking everyone. Letter D, though, would not work. Our conclusions would not be valid. Our sample size would be too small if we're only asking students who begin with the letter N or B. It makes sense. It is random, but how many students are going to have a name that starts with an N or a name that starts with a B? May not be very many. So there are 4 different types of surveying that we can do: convenience, self-selection, systematic, or random. And then there are 3 ways that we can collect some data: observational, controlled, or